Hi there. Today I'm going to be looking at a video from Animation Generation. She's apparently a consequentialist, and her video is about consequentialism versus virtue ethics. And as somebody who's kind of trying to learn about virtue ethics myself, I thought I would comment on this. So let's have a look.
Today I'm going over consequentialism versus virtue ethics. Let's explore these two captivating moral frameworks. So to start, thought experiment. Imagine a scenario. A man coerces a kid to jump out a window.
Come here, buddy, just one step further, you got this.
But just then, the building explodes. The kid survives, miraculously, and the man is a hero. But is he? What if the man didn't know the building was going to explode? It was completely unforeseen. He just coerced a kid to jump out a window. The hero aspect? Pure chance. Yes, I realize this is unlikely, but let's follow it through. Given the positive result, how do we determine whether this was good or bad? Allow me to introduce you to these two doctrines. Virtue ethics is the belief that the morality of an action is judged upon the intention and the general virtue or character of the person performing the action. What was the intended outcome?
Okay, so I think obviously this is necessarily a very brief discussion of what virtue ethics is, but I think for this example there's a little bit more that you need to take into account. So virtue ethics, above all, emphasizes the practice of living a virtuous life. So that's living according to virtues such as truthfulness, justice, friendliness, and so on. And really, it's not about the intention, it's more about, are you living up to those virtues? And the idea is that if you live your life according to those virtues, then when your life is complete, people will say of you, yes, this person lived a good life. So that's what it's all aiming for. And certainly this is the Aristotelian version of virtue ethics. Right, let's carry on.
Well, in this case scenario, the intended outcome of the man was to cause injury or death to a child. This bad intention suggests a general bad character, which makes the action completely and utterly wrong. The general character outweighs the outcome.
So what I would say is that the person here has failed to uphold the virtues of truthfulness, because he obviously intended harm to the child, and kindness and justice. So justice is a key one. And here, justice is about making sure that people get their just deserts, so that you treat people in a way which is just and recognises their needs and desires and treats them fairly.
Consequentialism, on the other hand, is the belief that the morality of an action is judged purely based on outcome. After all, outcome is what physically affects the world around us. Wouldn't that be of utmost importance? This man did just save a kid from exploding. According to consequentialism, this action is good because the consequence of the action was beneficial. That seems a bit fishy, doesn't it? To say the entirety of the action was good despite the bad intention. How do we condemn this man if the action had good results? Well, there's more to consequences than the immediate consequence. Let's explore this thought with a few more thought problems, like the trolley problem and doctor problem, and see how they differ in terms of consequentialism. Starting off with the classic trolley problem. You know the gist. The train is barreling towards these 5 people, and you have the opportunity to switch tracks and hit this one person. So, are you more morally responsible by switching tracks? You don't know any of them, by the way. In my opinion, from the point you realize that you have the option to switch tracks, you are equally responsible for the death of 5 or the death of 1. But that seems easy. Keep more people alive.
So here, your consequentialist and your virtue ethicist would be in agreement. So one of the key things that Aristotle talks about is practical wisdom. So in the context that she describes, you've got 5 people on one track, one person on another track. You're a bystander, so you've just happened across this. You don't know anything more about what's going on than what's been presented. And so you use your kind of common sense or almost and say, well, okay, given everything else being equal, the best decision that I can make is actually to flip the switch, and that's going to result in killing the 1 person rather than the 5. And, I will deal with the feelings and emotions that come with that I have killed a person by my actions. And that, of course, is one of the key virtues, which is courage. You have courage to take action to save 5 lives at the cost of 1 life. And that's not to be underestimated.
You are now a doctor with 5 very sick patients who need organs and 1 healthy person. All 5 of these people could be saved, and all it takes is the death of this 1 healthy guy. So, same equation, right? 1 healthy person to save 5 people.
The trolley problem was actually invented by a philosopher called Philippa Foot, who very much was associated with the resurgence in interest in moral ethics in the 20th century. And she spoke about the trolley problem and the problem with the doctors at the same time. And she wouldn't have described herself as a virtue ethicist, but she did talk a lot about the virtues. She came to the conclusion that there is a substantive difference between the case of the trolley problem and the case of the doctor. And for me, the key difference is that you're just some random bystander when we come to the trolley problem. When you're the doctor, you are in a practice. And if you look back to the key thing that a doctor is supposed to do, which is part of the old Hippocratic oath, is first do no harm. You can't sacrifice 1 person to save other people. That would not be seen as you being a good doctor, and it wouldn't be you following your good practice as a doctor.
While these seem like identical equations, here's why they are not the same. Because there is a definite difference. Keeping on track with consequentialism, societal implications. What happens in a society if healthy people can be randomly scooped off the street and have their organs harvested for the benefit of others? That would cause... what a society.
So I think that this, although she doesn't stress this leads to what I think is a fundamental problem with consequentialism, which is, when do you stop looking at the consequences? So she said, well, it would be a bad thing if people could be taken off the streets at random and sacrificed to save other people. Yeah, well, let's think about that a bit more deeply. Maybe in that case, it would force people to look after themselves better, because they think, well, I don't want to go into a hospital and come to the notice of somebody who might then put me to sleep and then harvest my organs. Conversely, maybe it would make people less likely to look after themselves, because they might think, well, if I have a healthy body, I'm going to be the one sacrificed, and therefore if I have an unhealthy body, then nobody will want my organs. You don't know what the consequences would be. And to me, this is the fundamental problem that consequentialist always comes up against, is when do you actually stop? You know, you can look further and further and further, and when do you know when the outcome of any particular action is good or bad? Do you go 100 years in the future, 1,000 years in the future? It's something that seems intuitively very simple, but when you start to look into it, it has all sorts of unforeseen consequences, as it were.
Do we as a society want this guy going around town coercing kids to jump out windows? No. Consequentialism may condemn this guy as a potential threat to society in the future, despite any short-term heroic acts.
Okay, so this is just a minor one. I don't think that a good society would punish people for things they haven't done yet. That's kind of the Society of Minority Report. But I think, you know, if she was to do this again, she would actually word it a little bit differently.
Rolling back to the topic of doctors, think of House, this seemingly immoral doctor who gets the job done. So, would you rather have a doctor with good character or intention, or this guy right here? I don't know about you, but I'm sticking with House.
House is an interesting one. I think that there are two different ways of looking at this. So one of the ways of looking at this is to think about yourself as a patient of House, the fictional doctor. So if you had a condition which didn't require him to ask questions about your emotional state, and didn't require him to look after you and care for your mental health, then yeah, maybe House would be the right person to choose. If you had something which required you to open up to him and trust him as a human being, then House wouldn't be the right person. So it comes down to kind of practical wisdom again, from my point of view. But if we look at it from the point of view of House himself, well, what we need to ask is House living a good life? He's become almost like this detective, and so everything is here. These symptoms lead in different directions, and then there's false trails, and then there's another symptom that we find, and you know, eventually we find the right answer. And what he's done is he's become incredibly good at that, but he's sacrificed a lot to get that expertise. So although he's admirable, you know, I think that at the end of his life, people will say, well, you know, he wasn't happy as a family man. You know, maybe his children would stand up and say, well, you know, all of this time he was studying medicine. I wish he'd spent more time with us when we were growing up. So he's not a fully rounded man. In terms of virtue ethics, he wouldn't actually be seen as somebody that you would want to emulate.
He achieves results through unconventional means, prompting further thought into what dictates our moral judgment: character or result.
I hope that's been helpful. If you have a take on this, I'm very much new at all this virtue ethics stuff. And if you've got a take on this which is different from mine, I'd love it if you would share it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope this has been interesting for you, and I look forward to producing another one of these soon.